And welcome to the Barry Foster Show on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Florist Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. Now, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, topics you'd like us to cover, people you'd like us to interview, you can just put it in the comments right below here. And remember, check out our YouTube page at the Barry Foster Show daily, Monday through Friday. The goal is to have a new program each and every day, Monday through Friday. Please subscribe to the YouTube page and join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. It would be very helpful. Really quickly, I do want to give a shout to our friends Steve and Jerry Slayball over at Strangely Warmed Coffee. We drink Strangely Warmed. We suggest the Peruvian blend, but there are many blends that you can try. You want to find out more if you're not in the area, strangelywarmedcoffee.com, or strangelywarmedcoffee.com, or just do an internet search for Strangely Warmed Coffee. They also have a Facebook page. Coming up next month, they're going to be doing some projects, and just let them know. But if you're in Sebring, they're go down Commerce Street, 180 steps off the circle. They're down there. John Larsen in the studios with us this morning. And, John, last week we talked about the Harder Hall situation. We'd gone to the meeting, and now it's hit the print. It's hit the print media. They an article and an editorial about it.
An article and an editorial, yeah. And I thought the article was very equally stated, okay, as far as the circumstances of the meeting and what had happened, the history of all of that, and so on. I thought the reporter,
really long.
Mark Valero, Mark Valero was the reporter that was there, and he's the one that wrote the article. And I thought it was kind of even-handed, so I didn't have any real complaints about it, and so on. But in the end, again, I think most of the people that were there, that the Blackmans were not treated fairly. That was my sense. And I think that when you sit down and you look at it as an outsider, I don't have the Blackmans' wherewithal, but if you come to town after 30 years plus of the city, and I've been here for 20 years, so I've seen a lot of the back and forth over the last 20 years about this place, that they had this suitor come forward, it failed. This suitor come forward, it failed. So they've gone through all this, and the city has bent over backwards trying to find someone to take this project on that had the wherewithal to do it. So after all of that time and all this frustration of going through these other suitors, the Blackmans come along approximately 3 years ago and say, okay, we're ready. We can do this. We have the wherewithal to do it, and we see Sebring as a really good place to kind of put a stake in the ground. We've had a lot of history of doing this in the Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg area, so we know what we're doing, and we feel that we can do it. And they then went ahead the last 2 or 3 years dealing back and forth with the city, and then started to pour money into the facility. And as Mr. Blackman, Robert Blackman, said last Tuesday, we've spent upwards so far of $10 million. And he said, we expect before we're done, it's going to be close to $40 million. $40 million, all right? So they were prepared to do this. And now, over the last 2 or 3 months, here comes the city council saying, not so fast. We don't like the fact that you wanted to take on the golf course. But I think your idea last week when you brought it up, I think is a good one. You don't need to forever give the golf course to the Blackmans. They had a quasi-agreement, I think, for $1 a year money, but they could have then said to the city, if they wanted to protect the rights of the donors of the property for the golf course, which, by the way, and I think I mentioned this, but if I didn't before, in 2023, the only time I was able to find anything about the golf course, the city lost, I think it was around $550,000 in 1 year, 2023. They had to take that money out of the general fund, all right? And I'm sure the general fund was never set up to prop up the golf course, but they did. And that's not the first time. They've had many years of doing this for the golf course, and it still is, as the woman that got up last week as a golfer said, it's in terrible shape, and the management is terrible.
I find this hard to believe because someone who is in the golfing business in Highlands County intimated to us that the city, and I have not followed the city as closely as I might I think they're on the second set of the track. They're not as quite as close as they were yesterday. Makes me feel better. And there's no one tied to the track.
Engine number 9.
Yes. So, the Cannonball Express. At any rate, he intimated to us that and I haven't followed the city budget as closely as I probably should have since I retired from radio, but they spent $750,000 on equipment for the course. Now, I don't know whether they have the equipment and don't have people to run it or what, but the lady who was a golfer came up and was talking about what terrible shape the course was in. And as I told the city council, for years I have seen them struggle to get membership. And if they would just do this one thing, they just get a new cart barn or new carts or new this or new that, then they could. But I've seen the tournaments go away. Used to the LPGA, the women's professional golfers, the ladies professional golfers had a tournament there. There were big youth tournaments there. Those have all dried up and gone away because I don't know why. I would say people would say mismanagement. I don't know why, but you're right. We've seen the taxpayers, and for better than 30 years, I paid for a lot of that. Even though I think I set foot on the golf course one time, maybe.
Right. Well, I think it was pretty obvious from the comments made, and even I think by their own admission, the golf course is in disrepair. The Blackmans had said at the outset, or at least at that meeting, look, we're prepared, because one of the problems they have, from what I understand, I've never played there, okay, but what I understand, when it rains substantially, the golf course has a tendency to flood.
Drainage problems.
Right. And so they have huge problems with that. Number one, the Blackmans said, look, we're prepared to take care of that. If we have these spots that we can't fix otherwise, if we can't change the topography to take care of the water problem, that will install ponds on the golf course to take this water in, and it'll become a water hazard. And all golf courses have water hazards. So that's nothing new. It's not like reinventing the wheel. So they were prepared, and like he said, we're not going to spend millions of dollars to fix up the hotel and not have the golf course in very good shape for people wanting to play there.
They want to make it a golfing resort.
Absolutely.
And have golfers there.
Yep.
And I'll tell you that, I know what he wants to do. They said that they had another drainage solution, which was the dirt road that ran next to the fire station, but they were turned down on that. They thought it was a land grab. There were several things that they've tried to do and haven't been able to do, and they felt, I think, like they were, as they would say, as we point out, strung along. Oh, don't worry, this won't be a problem. We'll just do this later. Here's what I think. I have no documentation to back this up. Okay, I have this gut feeling. I've lived in Highlands County since 1986, I've lived here since 1986. I've seen the way things work. I've watched things, and you get this, in the world of comic books, you'd call it a spider sense. You get this spidey sense goes off that something's going on. And it was about a year ago, I think, the Tourist Development Commission released an artist rendition of what would happen if they took over the golf course and eliminated it as a golf course, and took that property and set up all kinds of recreation there, pickleball courts and tennis courts and frisbee golf and this and that and the other thing. And there was a huge pushback, and immediately, oh no, this is just a concept. This is just a concept. It's just something we looked at and thought, you know what, this might be a good idea, And it reminded me of the story I've told many times of the government by leaks. They leak something out, look at the public response, and then decide whether that's something they want to do or something that they'll back off and say, oh no, it was just an idea. But Casey Wall and at least one other person from the TDC was at that meeting and watching this. And I think somewhere that they have gone and whispered in the ears of some of these city council members that, you don't have to lose money as this is a golf course. You don't have to lose any more money. We'll take this and eliminate the golf course, because the deed restrictions only say it has to be for recreation. And they don't specifically say what recreation that is. You know, golf is recreation, but baseball is recreation, football is recreation, pickleball is recreation, you know. A splash pad for kids, that's recreation. There's a lot of definitions for what recreation is. And I think someone has been, we can get you big grants. And the thing is, okay, as we see with anything, it's like there's no such thing as a free horse. If they give you the horse, you still got to groom it, you still got to feed it, you still got to clean up the poop. You know, there's no such thing as a free horse or a free dog, for that matter. And this recreation thing is not going to be free, but I think that there's somebody whispering in multiple city council people's ears that, don't worry, you don't have to give them that course. You know, and here's the thing. The thing about it is this: is that, and my idea, and I pointed out last week that that NASCAR does not own the Sebring International Raceway. They lease it. They lease it, and the airport authority and the city get a nice kickback from ticket sales and all that kind of stuff. There's a big deal that goes on with that, and you know, in fact, Blackman could make them the same kind of deal, saying, you know, We'll give you some greens fees. We'll help you kind of. It'll be a little cash cow. It's what they call a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. But I think, and we talked about this off the air about there are people who are members of the Good Old Boy and Good Old Girls Club, okay? And when they talk, they carry a little more weight because their families are well entrenched in the area. And the difference between the Good Old Boys in Chicago and the Good Old Boys in Sebring is the size of the city, okay? But at any rate, I think that there's been some whispering in the ears about doing something other than a golf course, and that's why I think some of these council members are so resolute in not wanting to do it. I think they have another plan, a plan that they dare not speak about, okay? They don't dare not speak about it right now, but I think that they've got another plan, and you'll find out about it later. And probably the best thing for them is for the Blackmans to walk away. Then that problem's solved.
Well, if the Blackmans, like he said, there's possibly two options. Number one would be to turn it into a nursing home.
Oh, for the hotel, you mean?
Yep, turning it into a nursing home, or in fact, tear it down and then sell the land off and get some of your $10 million back, and so on. So I think those are the options. But I also believe, just from the sentiment of the meeting, and you never know what's going to happen, never try to predict election outcomes. But if this thing does fall apart because of this, I think the city council is going to have some hard questions to answer, let's put it that way. And I think they're going to be very hard-pressed to come up with any viable options that they could say to the public, this is why we did this. It was in the betterment of the community.
Well, I wish that was true, John, but let me tell you something. I was here when I first came to the city of Sebring. My electricity was provided by an organization called the Sebring Utilities Commission, okay? And the Sebring Utilities Commission was on and I never found out about this until it was way too late. It was on a downward slide, and it all had to do with the building of a giant power plant out by the airport, which was supposed to be state-of-the-art, but it turned out it was a giant white elephant. They sold them. They were in for all kinds of money. And as they went down the line, the money continued to increase. The Utilities Commission could not go bankrupt. They could just charge us more money, and it was a horrible thing. And you know, I was right in the middle of doing that. And there was a big list of investors who supposedly were profiting from all this, and they were your friends and neighbors, people who lived in the city of Sebring. And there was a huge clamor to have the list of investors released. It was like the Epstein files. It's never released. We don't know who was making. There was rumors, but we don't know who was making money off this. And who made the deals as city council members? No one remembers their names. Who served on the Sebring Utility Commission? No one remembers their names. And I think these people could easily say, look, by the time this happens, you'll be retired and no one will remember who sat up here and made these deals. That in 5 years, in 10 years, I mean, I can name Sebring City Council members that you've never heard of. You know, Eugene Sauls, Eileen Fields, John Havlin. John Spiegel was a city council member, for crying out loud. You know, there were mayors, you know, like Smith Ruddisell. Who remembers Smith Ruddisell? You know, the only reason people know who Jack Stroop is because they named the Civic Center after him.
Right.
He was a city clerk when I came in, and he was a guy who was kind of like the Sebring version of Charlie Kirk. He had all the books that held the memories back in his brain. He didn't have to go and look anything up. He knew it because he'd been in for such a long time. So I think these people think that by the time anything like this happens, they'll have culpable deniability. No one will remember who did it.
Yeah.
And once that, you know, it's like when they stood down the Avon Park Police Department. They said you'll never be able to stand another one back up again, you know, and it didn't have any effect. Who remembers the city council members in Avon Park who did away with the police department? Maybe 2 or 3 people. Not hardly anybody remembers how the city got in the situation it's in. I remember because, you know, I was there. All that being said, I think somebody is whispering in the ear of these individual council members and has convinced them that they can get rid, and the Blackmans are collateral damage.
Well, I think the one of the things, though, that could come back, as they say, to bite you, and that is, and I think even Mr. Blackman said there all along the way, but if this thing goes away, and I have already brought 4 or 5 of my billionaire buddies to town to say, look, here's opportunities for you guys in the Sebring, Highlands County area. You can come here, invest your money, and it'll be good. It'll be good for the people. It'll be good for you. If that goes away, I think the damage for Sebring long term is also going to be in trouble.
Well, I don't think that these folks are not thinking in the long term.
No, I know they're not, but if I was sitting up there and looking at the downside of the decisions that we made that caused this to fall, and it doesn't mean that it's going to fall apart. It may very well be that maybe for some reason, somehow, some way, they can come together with an agreement that says, okay, it's not what I want, it's not what you want, but this is going to work. We're going to make this work. We're so far into it, we'll make it work under these circumstances. I think your idea of letting the Blackmans have the golf course for $1 a year for, pick a number, 50 years. It's your golf course for 50 years. You're responsible for maintaining it. You're responsible for improving it, you know, and that's the way we'll settle that situation, if that's agreeable to both sides.
And if anything goes bad and you have it comes back to us, if you don't fulfill these requirements,
right, it
comes back to us.
Right.
You know, the same way the track runs, you know, same kind of deal.
But from the Blackmans' point of view, having if you will, a futuristic antiquity-styled hotel in place, but one that people want to come to and stay at, all right, having the golf course as part of the amenities for that is necessary in this day and age.
Now, I got to tell you that once upon a time, when I was a talk show host on terrestrial radio back in the olden days, I had a guy call me every once in a while, and they would be talking about these great new projects that were going to be coming to Highlands County. You and I both knew him pretty well, a guy by the name of Bill Youngman. And Bill would say, well, you know, a lot of us don't want to see a lot of growth here in Highlands County. We moved here because it's rural. Okay, rural. It's a rural area, and we kind of like that. We moved away from the big city. We don't want to see a lot of development here in Highlands County. And there may be people on the city council who think, you know what? We kind of like a small town. It's kind of easier to control as a small town, especially when you have your elections on the week before race week. One of the biggest event happens in the county and arguably in the entire area all year long. So you only need about 25 people to get a to get a majority to get you in. But that being said, there may be some people who, when he said the billionaires weren't going to come, that was music to their ears. That they didn't want any billionaire coming in here and setting up some kind of big manufacturing or distribution company or something that would provide a lot of jobs. We don't need that kind of thing.
Well, that could be, to me, that would be short-sighted. But if that's the way they want to run the community, then they should put up a sign out there next to the Welcome to Sebring sign. They should put a sign up. However, Welcome to Sebring, however, here's our stipulations, okay?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what they like about the Sebring International Raceway, is that for the most part, just like the grasshoppers in A Bug's Life, they come, they eat, they leave. The tourists come, they spend their money, and then they go. They don't buy houses, okay? God forbid. Right. They don't build a new house. They come, they stay in a hotel, motel. They arguably, supposedly, eat at the restaurants, buy gasoline, go to the stores, and then leave. Although I will tell you that most of the tourists who come, they don't go to the stores. Okay, and the information in the surveys that I've seen, they don't do the kind of things that the TDC would allege that they do. But nonetheless, I think that there may be a contingent, and there may be 3 of 5 people who sit on that board who believe that way, or who have been convinced that, gosh, and they don't have to put a sign up. They've got people like Robert Blackman going, you don't want to go there. You don't want to go and try to invest money there. Who should be? There are people who have ingratiated themselves to elected officials, and they are allowed to operate the way they want to operate. Has there been money exchanged? I don't know. I can't tell you. I can tell you that there have been people who have gotten buildings given to them if all they do is bring them up to code. And in fact, Robert Blackman pointed out that in the past the council has helped, given money, and gotten grants for people, and they've gotten the short end of the stick on it. All right? So he said, and we're here to do the right thing. So I think, personally, that there has been some whispering going on, and there may be people who stand to. We've seen people long ago in a galaxy far, far away get elected to public office in different places who have used that public office to inure themselves, to make money for themselves, and then gotten off the council or the commission or the board or the whatever it is, the elected office. They got what they wanted and got out. Okay, so when I'm watching this going on, you got to try to figure out there's something here we don't understand. There's something here we don't understand, and it came to me later, having seen this. I put one and one together. I saw the TDC people there. I saw their idea for what wants to happen. I saw the absolute, resolute, the absolute no votes. There was no. Not let's talk about it. Let's see how we can make this work. It was NO spells no.
Right. Yep.
So I said, what is going on here?
Yep.
And so that is. I could be wrong. Lord knows. I've been wrong before. I have predicted things that I thought would happen immediately. One of my favorites is when they first started going to self-serve gas stations. I thought those would never last. I was wrong.
Yep. Yep.
Hey, I've been. There's an old country music song. I've been wrong before, and I may be wrong about this. And I don't live in the city of Sebring. I don't have a dog in this fight. Okay.
Right.
But knowing what I know and have covered Highlands County for 40 years as a news director, I've sat through more municipal meetings than some people have had hot lunches. I've gone to Sebring Airport Authority meetings. I've gone to school board meetings, county commission meetings, city council meetings, Avon Park, Sebring, Lake Placid. I've gone to workshops. I've gone to off-site workshops. I've watched everything from right here in Avon Park where they had the huge meeting about the Illegal Immigrant Relief Act. Okay, I went to the county commission meeting when they went to the mandatory garbage collection. And one guy even got up there and sang a little song about how poor he was and he couldn't afford it, and that was a great comic relief. But I've gone to a lot of these meetings and I've watched a lot of things happen. And later people have come to me and said, well, you know what happened, don't you? I said, no, what happened? And they've explained to me the behind-the-scenes wrangling that went on. And he said, well, you didn't hear this from me, or don't you dare ever repeat, this, these, what happened on some of this stuff. And I never have. They asked me to keep it off the record. They spoke to me off the record. I'll keep it off the record. But when I watch this, I just get this feeling that there's something, as Shakespeare said, in Hamlet, there's something rotten in Denmark.
Well, the other thing about this to me is that you've got the city, and you would think the city would love nothing better than positive PR. Okay, positive PR. But I mean, I'm sure that the word of what's happening here is already spread outside of Highlands County. I'm sure it's gotten out of Highlands County, all right, especially since it's in the published print and all that. So you've got that part of it. I'm sure that there were some folks at that meeting last Tuesday that have spread the word beyond Highlands County from what they saw and heard and so on. So, but the other thing is, if I'm a city council person sitting up there and I'm listening to what people are saying, which was to me about probably 90% of it was pro-Blackman comments that were being made, okay? And I look at the tea leaves and read the tea leaves and knowing like, I may be on this committee, but how long am I going to be here? So politicians are always looking out for the next election. When am I up for real? And what have I got to do? What have I got to say? Who do I have to glad hand and pat on the back and all of that for my next election? That's their number one thought, is the next election. So I just wonder if any of them had that kind of thought, knowing that the crowd sentiment was totally with the Blackmans.
See, I've gotten good at counting votes when I'm watching this, and I've whispered. Used to that they had two newspapers here and the radio, so there's like at least three of us sitting around, and we'd kind of kibitz. I said, this is never going to make it. Or, I think so and so is going to flip, and we'd have these little discussions there, about what was going to happen. And not only in Sebring, but in other places too. I used to work in Winter Haven, and there was a guy who was the news director for WGTO. His name was Jim Bob Greenfield. And he would vote along. He said, all in favor say aye. He'd go, aye. He'd vote along with them. But at any rate, we'd have these little discussions about what we thought was going to happen. I can tell you, I can count 3 votes right now. Leonard Carlisle is not going to, he's going no place.
No.
Rebecca Kogelschatz is a no.
No.
She's not going any place.
No.
Roland Bishop is on the other side. He's saying yes. And he wants to make this happen. There's 2 votes. There's 2 votes that are the sons of longtime residents, okay? Josh Stewart, Mark and Madge Stewart's kid, okay? And he's a kid because he's younger than my kid. Anyway, he's the chairman this year. They go, I guess they call it the president of the council.
Right. Yep.
And Harrison Havery, the son of Harry Havery.
Right.
And they both seem to be kind of malleable. They seemed that they wanted to make something happen. They were not in a position to give the Blackmans the course. They didn't want to do that, but they did want to do something. And now Blackman, as he said, Robert, and I don't know if his dad also had gone and spoken to each one of these council members individually. You can't speak. They can't. No, 2 of them can't meet together. That would be a violation of what they call the Sunshine Law. So Blackman had talked to each one of them individually, and so there's 2 votes there. I don't know which way they go, but they would both have to say yes to go along with Roland Bishop to roll it on a 3-2 vote. So, but I can't count that. But I think there's something else going on here.
Well, you very well could be right. I mean, it's who knows what, and even though they so-called have the Sunshine Law, there's no doubt that there could be some backroom deals have been
Now,
made.
what you've read I have to admit, I do not read the paper. I was at the city council meeting. I didn't have to read Valero's.
Well, I guess when they write an op-ed, they don't have to put their name down.
No.
I guess it's
No, they don't.
whoever. So this is anonymous that was written. It was the op-ed that
It's
was
the
in the paper
newspaper's position.
yesterday, and it said that here's where the trouble started. You're talking about the golf course. None of this was discussed or decided before witnesses. The issue was never brought to before the people. There were never any transparency. The negotiations occurred behind closed doors, despite the fact that the golf course belongs to the residents of Sebring. In addition, the Caddy Shack and Grill, a small privately owned business that leases the space from the city, was never consulted. The owners of the popular restaurant now expect to be relocating in 1 year. The Sebring City Council did agree earlier this month to a 1-year extension of its rental agreement on the location next to the city golf course. So already, the city agreed to a 1-year extension of the lease for the Caddy Shack restaurant. So if that was the case, then they had the thought at that point that, all right, the Blackmans are going to take over the golf course. So between that thought and Tuesday's meeting, what happened? Okay, they obviously had some premonition that the Blackmans were going to take over the golf course and the restaurant, after 1 year, was going to be gone.
Well, it may have been that, or I don't know in the city of Sebring now how much the tail wags the dog.
Yeah.
There was a time when Bob Hoffman was elected as the administrative assistant, and they relied on him to do a lot of the stuff, the heavy lifting, okay? Bob has since left. Scott Laitlick has now come in as the, I think he's the city manager now. He's some city manager. Anyway, he's the manager now, and it would not surprise me if as a stopgap measure, he went to council members and, councilman, it wouldn't hurt if we gave them an extension for a year, because we don't know how everybody's going to vote. We don't know what's going to happen. So just in case, let's give them this extended lease. They may need it. They may not need it. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen next. So I can see maybe the administration maybe had decided to do that. And you don't want somebody to get caught short like that. We've seen private sector arguments where a leasee, let's say a restaurant, for instance, a restaurant has had a disagreement with the management, with the owner of the building, and the restaurant says, you know what, we don't have to have this disagreement, we're leaving, and they have just vacated the premises.
Well, from my understanding, one of the local restaurants did that very thing here within the past month. So yes, that can happen. The very end of it, what he says here, now that the future of the golf course is in doubt, we owe the Blackman family an apology. Trust is gone. It is a shame, and it didn't have to end this way, which is why we agree with the majority of the City Sebring Council, who voted at their September 16th meeting to continue with their plans to issue a request for proposal to clean up the mess. This is a people's business. We need to know the plan, the timeline, and who pays for what.
Well, an RFP is just that. It's a request for proposals.
Right.
Okay? So now, the property that was donated, okay, and as it sits now, was designated for recreation. But recreation covers a lot of ground.
Right.
Okay? There's what's recreation? Golfing is recreation. A driving range is recreation. Pickleball courts are recreation. Tennis courts are recreation. Skeet shooting is recreation. A BMX bike track is recreation. There's all kinds of different kinds of recreation that don't necessarily have anything to do with golf.
Did we not see a BMX track be built here in town?
Oh my!
At the pit out there off of 17 was it?
The Borough Pit, yeah.
Yeah, and how long did that last?
Not long.
Not long, it's right. And so the city spent time, energy, and some money, I assume, to build that track.
No, that was the county.
Well, whoever did
I will tell you,
it didn't survive.
No one knew how long it took and how much it cost to build that track, and I opined that it probably cost in excess of $1 million, which caused people to vibrate. But right off there said, well, it didn't cost that much. I said, how do you know? How do you know? You have supposedly have no records. Supposedly, for instance, they sent equipment from the landfill over to grade and set that BMX bike track up so they could race their bike tracks downhill. It was like one downhill course,
right.
And they spent all kinds of money. They spent all kinds of money on all different kinds of things. They put up the building that was put up there, I understood, was done with private sector funds, but. When I said how much, well, no one knows. I said, well, then I'm going to say it probably cost $1 million. Well, you can't say that. I said, why not? Why not? We don't know how much it cost. You have no receipts on this. So yeah, when government gets in it and they don't do a very good job. They didn't the county didn't do a good job on the BMX track. And to be honest with you, the city doesn't do a very good job as golf course managers.
Well, to take a look at it from the Blackman's perspective, if you finish this hotel and the people say, what kind of amenities do you have here? Well, you can go across the street and you can play this sport, that sport, this sport. That is not going to draw the crowd. You're probably looking at people that are going to go there and stay for a night or two or three.
Normal folks,
but also probably not 15-year-olds or even 20-year-olds. Okay, it's probably going to be more like people that are 55 and that age range. They're not interested in walking over there and playing beanbag. Okay, they're interested in maybe going over, riding their golf cart, and playing 18 holes of golf.
Oh,
that's what they want to do.
That was the whole deal. The idea was to take this, and I found an article from 2023 when we had Robert Blackman at the Highlands Tea Party, who was talking about this state of the art architect that they had come in to do work on the hotel. They brought in the heavy hitters.
Right.
His presentation said they were going to make this into a state-of-the-art course. Now, it's not going to be the biggest golf course ever.
No.
Because it's landlocked to where it is, okay?
Right. Yep.
But they were going to make it into this great course, and as we all know, many businessmen do deals on the course. And that was the idea, so that they would bring in their millionaire, billionaire friends in to go to this little hotel, have a really nice restaurant for them, okay? Have a golf course across the street that would be open to the citizens, during the week, and then or maybe on the weekend, pick a time,
right.
and then the fees would go up. The greens fees would go up, and it would be you'd get a deal if you were staying at the hotel.
Right.
They were trying to make it into a deal where they would bring in high-end people who would really have the money to dropping $100 on dinner is not a big deal for them.
No, not at all.
It's a big deal for us.
Yeah, well, good. Although
it's a real big deal for us.
Yeah, you're faced with that almost every day today. I don't care who you are.
Good gravy. But I think that this is why did this happen? I think because in the beginning, and Robert Blackman at the workshop in March said we should have gotten this in writing.
Right.
And he's exactly right about this. In the beginning, they were going to do this, but now lately, I think that a new girl's moved into town, and I know that you want to go steady with Mary Lou, okay? But this new girl, Cherie, has moved into town, and she's a real looker, and so maybe I'm not going to date you, Mary Lou. Maybe I'm going to date this other girl. What do you think about that idea?
Well, that could be that would offend me some. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes. Absolutely. No, it's we will see what happens. I think their next meeting is scheduled for sometime in October, right? The monthly meeting, city council.
The city council meets the first and third Tuesdays of every month.
Okay, but did they not say
they said
something?
That and I don't have my notes with me.
Table it?
But yeah, they did not take any action and instructed staff by consensus. Now, they took no vote. Did they take a vote on this?
Well, if you remember, the one council member he brought up a motion to just stop, okay?
Roland Bishop.
Right,
yeah.
and he didn't even get a second.
Yeah.
All right, he didn't even get a second on that, but they could have voted it down even if somebody would have had a second. But,
and they didn't want to go on the record.
No,
they didn't
obviously not. No, so so at that point, it was really, and at that point, then the Blackmans had left, so it was really dead in the water.
They could, and so the the instruction was, and I believe the president of council, Josh Stewart, gave the instruction was that staff was supposed to prepare an RFP, and I put a call in. It was the day that we did the show. I didn't get a call back. I said, "Who's doing that? What does that mean? Who's putting is that City Attorney Bobby Swain? Is that City Manager Scott Natelick? Is that City Clerk Kathy Haley? Is it somebody else? I have no idea who's up, but I think it's just going to be boilerplate. We have this facility, and we would like to have your proposals on what you would do with it, and they would put in the provisions it has to be for recreation, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So we'll see how that goes.
And I don't think I don't know, I can't predict what anybody's going to say or do, but I would think that if it was a reasonable situation, again, with a long-term lease issue, I think the Blackmans might go along with it, if that's the only carrot in there. But if there's more than that to it, then that certainly may be a no-go.
I have reached out to Robert Blackman. I do have a cell number. I try not to bother him for all intents and purposes. I have reached out to him on more than one occasion saying, if you'd like to talk on the record, off the record, be on the podcast, your dad, we'd be glad to have him on and tell your side of the story pretty much uninterrupted. And he has declined. He's declined those invitations. I get the feeling that he feels like he's in a game of whack-a-mole, and if he sticks his head up out of the hole, somebody's going to hit him with a mallet.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
And once burned, twice, whatever.
Once bitten, twice shy. Yeah.
And so on. So he may be at the point where the less I say, the better. At this point, let them do their thing. We will see what they come back to us with, and in the meantime, we'll just kind of lay low and just do what we're doing and so on. I assume they want to, if they haven't finished the roof, I'm sure that's one project they want to finish because they brought them some heavy equipment out there to do that.
We saw those big cranes that they had.
Yes,
they call them lifts, but they're big cranes.
Yeah.
And if you don't seal the roof, then the rest of it's forfeit.
Yeah, you've got to stop any potential water damage from happening. So I'm sure that's one part of the project that, especially if they have thoughts, if this doesn't go through, if they have thoughts of selling it off or converting it to a nursing home, whether they would do that or whether they would sell it to somebody that would complete it as a nursing home, nobody knows at this point.
We'll have to see what happens next. There are a couple of other things. I know you've got some stuff too, but Florida Representative Ryan Chamberlain, who has been working to try to do away with property taxes in the state of Florida, has introduced his Freedom 123 project to eliminate property taxes. The first step would be 1, 2, 3. 1 is rollback, and that would be to roll back property taxes to the 2022 levels. 2 would be some transaction fees, 5% on ride shares, hotel rooms, some other stuff to help pay the freight on things. And 3 would be to put in a funding for school resources to get that done. And so it's going to be interesting to see. I put a note in to have him on to talk about his Freedom 123, and I think his website is something like End Property Taxes Now. But if you put in Representative Ryan Chamberlain, Florida Property Taxes, that'll pop to the surface for you. Also, the nonpartisan watchdog group Florida Tax Watch is weighing in on this idea of getting rid of property taxes, and they have 5 options that they would like lawmakers to consider before they do it. The 5 options proposed by the group is phasing out property taxes for the state's 5 million homestead properties, but this would be over 10 to 30 years, either by gradually increasing the homestead exemption or by basing it on a percentage of assessed values. The second would be targeted tax relief for seniors, particularly those 65 and older who have claimed homestead for at least 10 years. Under this plan, those seniors would be eligible for a full exemption immediately That would get rid of $3.6 billion in taxes. Maintaining school property taxes, which generates $21.5 billion, at least it did last year. It would phase out all the other ad valorem taxes to preserve education funding. Capping millage rates and lowering assessed values across the board, and then have a flat percentage reduction in tax liabilities. For example, a 20% exemption for all properties would save $11 billion a year, or $8 billion for homesteads. And to pass statutory reforms in the 2026 legislative session to improve the transparency and limit revenue growth without requiring a constitutional amendment. So there is a move now. Yesterday we talked about the pendulum swinging back on a revival for America, getting involved with the Americanism of Americans. I think they're now beginning to look at ways other than property taxes in the state of Florida to finance government, and I call it the Jenny Craig method. I thought, and what it is when you want to lose weight, what's the first thing they tell you? Eat less.
Eat less.
Eat less.
Eat less.
Exercise more.
Yes.
And so we would say that to reduce taxes in the state is, number one, is to spend less. If you have less money, you can't spend as much, and you cut back on the amount of money they have to spend, and by exercising more, turn more things over to the private sector, and let the private sector handle these things, and let people donate and help fund the things that they think are important, and the other things will either live or die on their own accord.
Well, I think that's that's the way it needs to be. We've talked about that here and have mentioned it at the county commission meetings on a couple of occasions, but other people have also, that the private sector could very well be the answer to saving some money. You take a look at the county budget, which is obviously going to pass, has a $3 million shortfall for this year, and so on, which means that their taxes are going to be increased, and so the taxpayers again are going to take the hit, and so on. But did the county do anything at all to reduce expenses?
Not to my
knowledge. Did they do anything at all to reduce expenses? All right, and that's the thing that people keep complaining about. You keep raising our taxes, and here's what gets me. All right, it's not only if you're a property owner. Okay, taxes raised is one thing. Utilities went up. Everybody I know, their electric bill went up. We are on an assessment for Sun and Lake for their new sewer plant. It's costing each one of the homeowners that are hooked up to Sun and Lake sewer plant, I think it's going to be a total of about $1,500. You can pay it, I think it's over like a 7-year period. So my water bill, which historically here for many, many years was in the $30 a month range, okay? There might be a month when if I was out of town, maybe the water consumption and sewer consumption was a little bit less, but roughly about $30. I now pay $55 a month. So it's close to doubling, okay, over the last couple years. And they had to have a new sewer plant. I understand that the old one was obsolete, no longer was functional for the number of people that they have hooked up to it, and so on. So, I mean, you've got everything that comes about, and they say, well, John, it's only $8 a month more for this. It's only $8 a month more for that. Well, then John goes to the grocery store like everybody else. And now your grocery bill is like maybe 22% more than it was a year ago, 2 years ago. So you've got everything going against the taxpayer financially, all right? Nothing is coming back to the taxpayer in the way of relief. No, it's all a little bit here, a little bit there, and if you're, like Highlands County is predominantly senior citizens. Most senior citizens predominantly live on fixed income, all right? You get X amount of money every month from your investments, your Social Security, whatever. So that doesn't increase, but guess what? Your costs increase every year. That doesn't include things like maybe you have cable. Your cable bill went up to some degree, all right? So all of these things add up. But when they live in their little bubble of, let's say, the county, and they say, well, look, it's only going to be, X amount of dollars this month. Well, what about all these other? Well, we can't be concerned about that. That's your personal life, okay? That's your responsibility. But I don't think they really take a strong look at the impact on people and what they can do and so on. So it's, to me, that's the way I see it, and I don't see many sympathetic people that rule the taxes and the other increases that are brought about. Somebody sits as a CEO in some far-off location and says, yeah, Fred, we're going to raise the people's, utility bill this month. Well, what does that mean? Well, they're going to have to pay another $10, $12 a month for electricity.
Well, our costs have gone. What they'll tell you is, our costs have gone up. Well, so have ours.
So have ours.
And they've shown that during the pandemic, they were pretty good at cutting taxes.
Yep.
They were pretty good at cutting back on things. They could do it. They could do it when they felt like doing it. Okay, but when they didn't feel much like doing it, they don't do it.
Nope.
And when they have this idea, they can, as a dear friend of mine used to say, stick a fat hog. They just put it to us, and we have to pay those things. And it doesn't seem like we're able to get people in office who will, over the course of time, stay the course and resist the idea of growing government and growing the spending on government.
Well, the other thing is that, they don't see what people have to go through. And, some folks, unfortunately, for whatever their circumstances were, I don't know, and I'm not planning to blame anybody, but some folks may not have planned well for retirement, okay? They floated along and they said, well, I don't really have to save anything. I've got Social Security coming my way, so that'll take care of me. Well, maybe back in the day, because my dad and mom, when my dad retired, he had no pension fund, he had no investment money because we were poor. The only income my mom and dad had was Social Security. And it wasn't very doggone much, I'll tell you right now, okay? My mom went through diabetes for like 35 years. So there was no situation, and that was back in the day when the cost of living wasn't anywhere near what it is today. I'm talking back in the 70s and 80s. Nowhere near what it is today. But today, when you say to someone, it's only a 3% increase. Well, thank you very much. But I've got a 4% here and 8% there and 9% over here. And now when I go to the grocery store, I look at all the stuff on the shelf that I would like to buy, but I can't afford it because all my expendable money has gone to all these other situations that I have to have. I have to have electricity, I have to have water, I have to have sewer, I have to have insurance, I have to have all of these things, all right, in order to protect myself. But I have to give up something, so I'm going to give up on what I buy at the grocery store or what I buy for medicine.
Yeah. When my dad used to say, when you make both ends meet, it breaks in the middle. And they made it so. And for us, we're on fixed incomes, but young people can't build wealth because they continue to ratchet up the prices on things. And I would take a 3 or 4% decrease, even though it's only a small amount. I'll take it. I'll take it. And we cannot find people who want to do that kind of things and reduce the size of government. I know that we have had some people from the county come in and address the Tea Party to ask questions. And I want to talk to the people at Road and Bridge, okay? I want to talk to the people who are in charge of the economic development. And I want to talk to people in charge of the landfill because a landfill increase for us is also coming.
Yep, and they have a new person in charge of or about to pick a new person in charge of the landfill.
I think that there are people who could address, and we might have to have a county commissioner who's been there a while to address it. I have watched it since the days that they were looking for a place to put a landfill. And interestingly enough, one of the places they wanted to, they said there was property, was right at the entrance to Highlands County. And this one guy was just raising Cain about how it was a horrible way to greet people. The first thing they see as they come into the county is the landfill. And I told him, I said, well, so-and-so, you should be happy about this. You should be delighted because you don't want to see, and it was not Bill Youngman, by the way, but you don't want to see any growth in Highlands County. This would be a great way to keep people out. And he was, well, I didn't want that. I didn't want that. I said, well, you should be delighted. And it was sometimes accountability is fun, But anyway, yeah, I'd like to find out some of these things because they continue to point to some of these things as the reason that the costs are going up. Now, you and I both know that when we have X amount of money to spend, then what goes first? Well, entertainment goes first.
Yep.
You know, those tickets at Disney World,
Yep.
you know, those tickets to Universal Studios, those are out the window. We can't.
Yep.
We're not going to be able to do that, you know,
Nope.
because we want to be able to put Brussels sprouts on the table. So, but you don't see the county, the government continues to look at taxpayers as a never-ending cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
The never-ending money will continue to come in until it doesn't. You know, and it's, at some rate, I'm hoping to find at least 4 conservatives, if not 5, to run for office in city council, county commission, school board, people who are looking, how can we not spend money?
Well, the other thing, and you mentioned it briefly, but that I didn't mention, that is the cost of housing. You take a look today, I would say that the vast majority of younger married, or even in people living together, but anyhow, are renting, not buying, because they look around and they say, here's a starter home for $287,000. Okay, 20% down. You're going to have $50,000, $60,000 down. How many young people have been able to put $50,000 or $60,000 together for a down payment on a home?
Yeah, and Dave Ramsey has a whole idea for this. It's like
yes.
buying a car.
Yes.
You know, you start with a little one and work your way out.
Right.
There was
I agree.
a woman named Lynette Jennings who always would suggest you find acreage, you build a bungalow with the idea that at some time that whole house is going to be your living room. Mm-hmm. And you just continue to build out and build up until you get the house you want.
But, I mean, it's the cost of everything today.
Oh, my gosh.
Because I spend a lot of time in the lumber store, okay? I buy a lot of wood and whatnot to do the things that I do and whatnot. So I can tell you that the cost of everything for a home, lumber, and everything associated with it are very, very expensive today compared to back then, mm-hmm. and so on. So, yeah, that's got to be serious concerns, but I don't think that's in the mind of the people that make decisions.
No, and as we get closer to election, I think part of what we talked about yesterday, the pendulum swinging back, people getting used to spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, mm-hmm. people talking about Americanism. We're going to see if we can find people who will run for office, people who can be from the very lowest level, the city council, county commissioners, to state representatives, and even national representatives, and see what they can take care of. Before we go, I do want to mention our friends over at Strangely Warmed Coffee. Steve and Jerry Slaybaugh over there have the best coffee on the planet. 180 steps off the circle in beautiful downtown Sebring. Go to strangelywarmedcoffee.com. The most important thing is tell them Barry sent you. And if you don't...
Did you say they have mushroom coffee?
No, they don't have any mushroom coffee that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That I'm aware of. But they do have a lot of swag. They do have T-shirts and hats and stuff now. But if you don't, I will tell you that the Nicaraguan coffee is very good. The Peruvian coffee is very good. And they have a new, if you're a decaf person, it's not decaf with chemicals. It's a cold water decaf. But if you go to the Strangely Warmed Coffee site, go to Strangely Warmed, and it's named after John Wesley, and who felt strangely warmed by the Holy Spirit. That's where that comes from. They didn't strangely warm the coffee.
Pumpkin spice?
They might have some. Jerry's there. She might have pumpkin.
Now's the time of year for pumpkin spice.
We'll have to check that out. Okay. Again, we're going to have a live episode of the podcast coming up, I think, tomorrow. Okay. We would like to remind you you've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded at the Ridge Florist Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. Any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, just put them in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. Our choice is to try to have a different episode up each and every day, okay? Subscribe and like to our YouTube page, and join our pages of the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram, if you would please. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, John Larsen and Barry Foster, and we'll see you next time.